Today's block that we are constructing for our row by row is the Buttercup block. So this is the block from there to there. And then for all of them, we've used the same background with the same green leaves on all of them. But we've changed up the colors of the actual buttercups and made them different pinks. There's all sorts of threads on this one, as you can see. So let's get on with it. For our buttercup block, we are going to cut the following. For our flowers, for each flower, we're going to need 1 square of 1.5, 1 square of 2.5, and 1 square of 3, which we are going to bisect into 2 pieces diagonally once. That will give us our buttercup flower. For our leaf part, we're going to need 1 square of 3, which we are going to cut diagonally to make our 2 leaf pieces. For the background of our block, the first things we need to cut is one rectangle of 1.5 by 2.5. After the rectangle, you're going to cut 1 square of 1.5 by 1.5. Then after that, you're going to cut 2 squares. We just get them into the picture. We're going to cut 2 squares, and they each measure 3 each, 3 by 3, and we're going to dissect them once diagonally, both of these. So we've got those parts. Then also we're going to need 3 squares of 2.5 each to finish our block. So now that we've got all the components cut, let me show you the layout. To start our block, we start off with a 1.5 by 2.5 rectangle, and we use the 1.5 by 1.5 square to make a corner there. And then we fill out the corner with a 1.5 by 1.5 flower square in there. So this is going to be our unit number 1. But we'll finish layout first, and then we'll add the rest. So now we come in with our diagonally cut squares that we made for with our flower fabric, and we're going to place them this way, and we're bringing our first 2 background triangles to complete those, like so. And then we come in with our 2.5 inch square to finish our flower. You can see that makes our buttercup in the center. Next step would be to bring in our 2.5 inch. I should move all of this up a little, or I can just bring the camera down. Let's just do that. There we go. We're bringing in our 2.5 and 2.5 in that corner to finish off. Now it's the turn of our leaves, where we use the triangle squares of the background again, like so, and we attach the leaf parts here, and to finish the block we have a 2.5 inch square in the corner. So there's our layout, and how we're going to start off with this is we're first going to build this little block in the corner by putting these 2 together, and then this one as a unit onto that one to create our first part of our block. So there we go. Our first unit has been, let me not move those too far. Our first unit has been joined together. Now we're going to join the rectangle to this unit that we've just sewn, like so, and a 1/4 inch seam down the side. There we go. Our first 9. You can see that this is going to end up being a 9 patch. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So this is the first corner of our 9 patch. And the pressing, let's just quickly talk about the pressing of this. I'll show you on the back. On the small ones, I press to the dark side, and on the larger piece, I used the path of least resistance and just pressed it to the lighter background piece. But it doesn't matter in which direction you actually iron this in our quilt, because these seams does not match up with anything, so it's not going to create bulk. You can press it whichever way you want to. The next step for this is we're going to create the rest of the units we have to make for the 9 patch to work, and this is the half square triangles. These two for the flower and these two for the leaves. So we're just going to sew down there and we're going to press to the dark side. Once we've sewn our 4 half square triangles, it's time to square them up, and they all need to measure exactly 2.5 to fit in with the rest of our 9 patch blocks. So what I do is I make sure this diagonal line is in place across my seam. Then we take off the 2 outside pieces on this end, turn it around, and now we've got 3 checks. We can make sure that this and this is on edge of the fabric, on the fabric, not on off the fabric, then your block is going to be too small, and that your diagonal is still running where you need it to go, like this. And we just cut the excess away. So there is our first trimmed up half square triangle, which we can now put into place on our block. We're going to do that with all 4 of them. There's all our blocks ready to put together, and now we're going to treat it just like a normal 9 patch. We're going to sew these 3 together, these 3 together, and these. Then we're going to iron them in opposite directions, each row, and then we'll put the rows together. But first, let's put the rows together. So we've got our rows. So there's the first row, and we've ironed them to the left. Our middle row, we ironed them to the right. And our last row, ironed to the left again. So all we now need to do is put our rows together. And there we have it. But can you see what happened? Take great care when putting these together. I turned this one around. This one will be perfectly okay if I did not. That should be the bottom, and this should be sewn to that seam. It would be perfectly okay, so I need to unpick this quickly and sew it again. So be careful when you put your blocks together. It's always helpful to have them sitting next to your machine. Right, after the unpicking and turning it around, there's our blocks. So you can see that they're not quite equal, and this will happen with most of your blocks. You now need to take these squares and square them all up to 6.5, and they're going to finish at 6 in your quilt. So this one is ready to be squared up and then to be put in our row, and we can start building. But before we do that, there's a couple more blocks to follow. So stay tuned for the next one. Have a great day.